Welcome to Auto News Talk. So, you might look at a vehicle driving down the street and just see like a machine made of metal, rubber, and glass.
Right, just a basic tool to get from A to B.
Exactly. But if you pull back the curtain on the auto industry right now, what you actually see is this ecosystem caught in a multi-billion-dollar squeeze.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive squeeze.
It's just a fascinating chain reaction. We are not just looking at a few isolated headlines here. We are mapping out a terrain that starts in global boardrooms with executives, scrambling to cut costs.
Yeah.
And then it ripples down to assembly lines that are quite literally stalling out. And eventually it lands right at your local dealership where they are just trying to find cars to sell to you.
That chain reaction is exactly right. To really understand the modern car market, you have to look at the entire board.
Right.
You have to see how shifting global regulations dictate what goes into a dashboard, how that impacts a factory floor in Alabama, and how that ultimately dictates the survival of the dealership in your neighborhood.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It is. Everyone, from the biggest legacy automaker to you, the individual buyer, is feeling this intense pressure.
Okay, well, let's unpack this from the very top.
Yep.
We have to start at the top of the automotive food chain, looking at the immense financial and regulatory pressures that are just squeezing legacy automakers.
Right.
If we look at the numbers coming out of Volkswagen's revenue outlook, the reality is stark. I mean, these legacy giants are facing a severe financial reckoning.
They really are.
They are caught right in the middle between the astronomical costs of electrification and, incredibly intense global competition.
Yeah, and the underlying data paints a very clear picture of that reckoning. I mean, Volkswagen completely reversed its full-year forecast.
Wow.
Yeah, they had originally projected growth of up to 3%, but now they are bracing for a 3% drop in sales revenue.
That is a massive swing.
It's huge. Their operating profit for the reporting quarter came in at 3.5 billion euros. Now, to the average person, that sounds like a lot of money.
Right. I wouldn't mind having 3.5 billion.
Exactly. But it completely missed the analyst consensus of 4.3 billion. And the fallout from that miss is massive. They are actively considering up to 100,000 job cuts.
100,000.
Yeah, double what they had previously discussed.
That scale is just staggering. I mean, what does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, it looks like entire factory sites in Hanover, Zwickau, and Emden, along with an Audi plant in Neckarsulm, suddenly being at risk.
Wow.
And the language the executives are using is incredibly revealing. Chief Financial Officer Arno Antlitz called their roughly 4% margin a wake-up call.
Yikes.
Yeah. He explicitly noted that management is actively considering alternative uses for factory capacity.
Which is like ultimate corporate speak, right?
Exactly. When you decode that, it means massive historic legacy plants might be completely repurposed or shut down forever.
Right. I think we need to explain why this is happening, though.
Yeah.
It's not just that people, stop buying cars. It's the mechanics of the EV transition itself.
Yeah, the funding model. Exactly. Legacy automakers rely on their gas-powered cars as cash cows to fund the research, the development, the factory retooling required for electric vehicles.
Right.
So when the profit margins on those traditional cars slip, the funding for the entire electric future just dries up. The implication is huge. Just being a historic, massive brand does not protect you from the crushing cost of modernization.
Precisely. The cash engine is stalling right when they need it most.
But, here is the blind spot in all these financial projections. What the report doesn't answer, and what no one seems to be addressing yet, is how powerful labor unions are actually going to react to the prospect of 100,000 job cuts and entire factories being shuttered.
Oh, yeah.
That is a massive, incredibly complex fight waiting to happen, and you can't just spreadsheet your way out of a labor strike.
Absolutely. You really can't. And to make matters worse, the irony is that just as these automakers desperately need to cut costs to survive this transition, global politics are forcing them to spend even more. Right. Which brings us to another major pressure point, the proposed national security restrictions on Chinese technology.
Yes.
Policies are being drafted that will essentially force automakers to rip out cheap Chinese hardware and software from their vehicles, driving up manufacturing costs across the board.
Right, because modern cars are essentially rolling computers. You don't just swap out a radio anymore. Everything is integrated.
Yeah, exactly.
And according to the breakdown on the proposed China component restrictions, these rules are designed to roll out in phases.
Okay.
They target software sooner, and then strict hardware limits kick in closer to 2030.
So they have a little time, but not a lot.
Barely any in automotive years. We are talking about the fundamental systems that run navigation, over-the-air updates, driver assist technology. Automakers are going to be forced into massive supply chain redesigns.
Wow.
Now, smaller, more flexible players, think of a company like Rivian, they might be able to pivot and find new domestic or allied suppliers a bit faster.
Right, because they're nimble.
Exactly. But for the massive legacy companies with global, deeply entrenched supply chains, it is a logistical nightmare. And keep in mind, the average new car price is already sitting at an incredibly high $49,456.
That's just wild. And here's where it gets really interesting on the cost front. There's a great data point from an Ohio-based startup called Eagle Wireless.
Oh, right, the module pricing.
Yeah. They noted that their non-China automotive modules cost anywhere from 5% to 15% more than the Chinese equivalents.
Right.
So you have these automakers, like we just saw with Volkswagen, trying to pinch pennies and save their margins, and suddenly their base electronic components cost up to 15% more.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's like trying to renovate your house, but right after you rip the walls down, the city tells you all your building materials have to be sourced locally for a premium, and your budget is already shrinking.
That is a perfect analogy. And the implication for you, the consumer, is pretty bleak. Automakers are not going to just eat that 15% cost increase. Buyers are very likely going to be the ones absorbing these compliance costs, either through even higher sticker prices on the lot or, by getting fewer tech features for the exact same amount of money.
Yeah, you pay more for less. But the lingering mystery here, what this doesn't answer, is the logistical reality of the supply chain itself. Can these non-China suppliers actually scale their production fast enough to meet these government deadlines?
That's the thing.
Right. The auto industry needs millions of microchips and modules. You cannot just snap your fingers and build 5 new, highly advanced semiconductor factories overnight.
That is the million-dollar question. And it transitions us perfectly from the boardroom and the supply chain directly onto the assembly line.
Okay.
Because with money incredibly tight and parts getting vastly more expensive, we are seeing automakers ruthlessly manage their actual vehicle lineups.
No, they were cutting the fat. They are pausing niche vehicles and leaning entirely on their high-volume cash cows. If we look at Honda's production updates, you see a textbook example of this portfolio optimization. Automakers can no longer afford to carry dead weight on the factory floor. They have to prioritize sure bets.
Right. Honda confirmed that their next-generation Ridgeline pickup truck will be built at their Alabama plant, but not until a couple of years from now, closer to 2028.
Okay, so a pretty big gap.
Yeah. In the meantime, they are pausing current production. Why? Because if you look at the other side of their business, the CR-V compact crossover just surged to the #1 spot in U.S. auto sales for the first half of the reporting period.
Oh, wow, the #1 spot.
Yes, it even pushed past traditional titans like the Ford F-Series and the Toyota RAV4, mostly because those competitors fell behind due to their own production bottlenecks.
And you really have to compare the sales numbers to understand the mechanics of why Honda is pausing the truck to make room for the crossover.
Right.
The Ridgeline is a total niche player in the midsize truck market. It does about 41,000 to 52,000 in annual sales. Meanwhile, a direct competitor like the Toyota Tacoma is moving over 270,000 units.
It's not even close.
Not even close. And I had to laugh because Honda's vice president of auto sales, Lance Wolfer, gave this classic PR statement promising that the future Ridgeline would have increased ruggedness. But he masterfully dodged the critical question of whether the truck would finally shift to a traditional body-on-frame construction.
Let's actually unpack that for a second because it gets to the heart of why the Ridgeline struggles against the Tacoma.
Yeah, please do.
So body on frame means exactly what it sounds like. The body of the truck is bolted onto a separate, heavy steel ladder frame.
Right.
It is how traditional trucks are built, and it is what gives them serious towing capacity, payload strength, and off-road durability.
Right. But the Ridgeline uses a unibody construction, just like a Honda Accord or a CR-V. The frame and the body are one piece.
Exactly.
It gives you a wonderfully smooth car-like ride. But truck purists look at it and say, well, that's not a real truck. I can't throw a ton of gravel in the back of that without wrecking the suspension.
Precisely. And Wolfer's careful pivot away from confirming a frame change implies a brutal reality. In the mid-sized truck market, car-like comfort just isn't enough to steal market share from the dominant players.
Yeah, you have to have the specs.
You have to deliver undeniable mechanical capability, Honda realizes the CR-V is their golden goose right now, so they are pausing the niche truck to feed the demand for the crossover.
But the piece of the puzzle missing from this report, the open question, is exactly how long the Ridgeline's production pause will actually last before that promised return to the Alabama plant.
Yeah, it's vague.
They point to 2028, but in a manufacturing climate this volatile, a temporary pause can easily turn into a quiet cancellation.
It really can, and we really need to emphasize how fragile that manufacturing climate is. Because even when an automaker builds a certified hit, a vehicle that everyone desperately wants to buy, the operational squeeze is still causing massive manufacturing hiccups.
Oh, absolutely.
If you look at a roundup of OEM production and financial updates, the core takeaway is that basic manufacturing flaws are continuing to severely disrupt operations.
It really is a domino effect of disruptions. Let's do a rapid-fire look at this roundup to show how widespread the vulnerability is.
Let's do it.
You have Honda pausing production on the Civic Si and Integra A-Spec over some complex EPA emission certification issue.
Right.
You have Stellantis recalling 641 Jeeps because of improperly manufactured wheels that might literally crack under pressure.
It's just terrifying.
Yeah. You have safety regulators at NHTSA opting not to open an investigation into the Tesla Model 3 emergency door releases after some crash concerns. You have General Motors pulling in a $1 billion Army order for 10,000 infantry vehicles based on their Colorado ZR2 truck.
Wow.
And then you have the anchor of the whole report, Ford.
Yes, the Ford Bronco recall. Ford is recalling a staggering 565,691 Bronco SUVs across multiple recent model years.
That's huge.
It is. And the issue is incredibly dangerous. Exposed circuits in the engine compartment wiring harness that can short out and cause a vehicle fire.
Jeez.
This isn't just a theoretical safety risk. They are aware of 15 known situations where this occurred, and it is even affecting the ultra-high-end, really expensive Bronco Raptor models.
And the fix for a problem that grounds over 500,000 vehicles is almost comically simple. They just have to install protective sheathing.
Just a simple wrap.
Right. But let's break down why this is such a big deal. A wiring harness is essentially the central nervous system of the car. It is a massive bundle of cables snaking through a very hot, vibrating engine bay.
Yeah.
If you leave circuits exposed there, they rub, they short, and they spark. It just shows how one tiny supplier component can completely cripple a major brand's momentum. The implication here is that quality control is slipping badly under the immense pressure of mass production and relentless cost-cutting.
It demonstrates the sheer vulnerability of modern production lines. Automakers rely on a web of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers. A mistake at the bottom of that chain amplifies all the way to the dealership lot. But this raises a very troubling question, and it's something the update completely fails to explain.
What's that?
Why were these harnesses manufactured with exposed circuits in the first place?
Right.
Was it a deliberate cost-saving measure to skip the sheathing? Was it a supplier error that somehow slipped through Ford's internal testing?
Yeah, we just don't know.
The lack of protective sheathing on a critical component points to a systemic failure in the engineering and validation process.
It really makes you wonder what else is slipping through the cracks while these companies are distracted by EV transitions and supply chain redesigns.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's bring this journey to its final stop, which is your local dealership.
Right, the front lines.
We have established that new cars are pushing 50 grand, they are facing impending tech restrictions, and they are suffering from massive disruptive manufacturing recalls. So naturally, you, the consumer, are flocking to the used car lot to find something affordable and reliable. But where are the dealers actually getting these used cars to sell to you?
That is the ultimate downstream dilemma. Traditional inventory channels like commercial wholesale auctions and off-lease returns are incredibly tight right now.
Right.
So dealers are trying to adapt by buying used cars directly from the public, but they are hitting a massive wall. Research into how dealers are trying to scale direct-to-consumer vehicle buying reveals something really fascinating.
What's that?
Dealerships aren't struggling to find people willing to sell their cars. They are drowning in the administrative back-end bottlenecks of actually acquiring them.
Yeah, the data on this pressure is intense. The Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index, which tracks wholesale auction prices, is up 2.1%, meaning it's incredibly expensive for a dealer to buy inventory the traditional way.
Exactly.
Franchise brands are sitting at a very low 53 days supply of inventory, and ideally, they want to be closer to 60 or 70 days.
Right.
But honestly, I have to push back a little here. I put my marketing hat on, and I think, if I'm a dealer, why can't I just run some targeted Facebook ads, offer top dollar, get people to drive to my lot, and just buy their cars off the street.
Yeah.
Why is this being framed as so structurally difficult?
It is a great question because on the surface, it sounds super simple. Just buy the car. But it comes down to the danger of scaling informal processes.
Okay.
If you look at insights from DealNow.com CEO Brad Parker, he warns that an informal workflow where a manager just looks over a car, cuts a check, and files some paperwork might be totally fine if you only buy a couple of cars a week.
Right, that makes sense.
But when you try to scale that up to 100 direct acquisitions a month, the back-end requirements multiply exponentially. You need robust, hardened API systems for identity verification to ensure you aren't buying a stolen vehicle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You need dedicated software to handle immediate title clearing and remote loan payoffs.
Ah, the loan payoffs. That makes total sense. Because if I sell a car to a dealer, but I still owe the bank $15,000 on it, the dealer can't just hand me cash.
Right.
They have to route the money to my bank, wait for the lien to be released, and secure the clean title before they can legally turn around and sell that car to someone else.
Exactly. And if a dealer tries to juggle 100 of those complex multi-party transactions a month using just like Excel spreadsheets and phone calls, it turns into an absolute cash flow nightmare.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Millions of dollars get tied up in administrative limbo. Furthermore, platforms like Kelley Blue Book or Facebook Marketplace are just lead generators.
Yeah.
They get the customer in the door, but they do not provide the back-end transactional infrastructure.
Right, they just connect you.
Yeah. Parker makes it clear that without strict standardized processes, the fraud risk becomes astronomical.
So it is the invisible paperwork and the software limitations that drag the whole thing down. The implication here is that dealers must treat buying cars directly from consumers as a strict, heavily mechanized internal operating system. It cannot just be a fun, localized marketing gimmick.
Correct. It requires a dedicated enterprise-level infrastructure.
But again, there is a missing piece to this puzzle. What the data doesn't detail is exactly how much upfront capital a dealership needs to invest to build this secure, high-volume infrastructure.
Right. It's not cheap.
Enterprise software, API integrations, hiring dedicated title clerks, none of that is cheap, and local dealers are already feeling the financial pinch from high interest rates.
Yeah, it's a tough spot.
Yeah.
So if we pull all of this back and look at the whole board, 3 massive themes emerge across everything we've looked at for auto news talk.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first theme is the cost of adaptation. You see this glaringly in the Volkswagen data, detailing their profit slump as they desperately try to fund the EV transition. And you see it again in the proposed China component restrictions, where automakers are being forced to rip out affordable tech and replace it with more expensive domestic or allied alternatives. Adaptation is bleeding their margins dry.
Absolutely. And the second theme has to be production vulnerability.
Without a doubt. The Ford Bronco fire recall perfectly illustrates how a single wiring harness, one exposed circuit, can ground 500,000 vehicles and cause a massive PR crisis.
Right.
Meanwhile, Honda's shifting factory lines show how delicate production balance really is, forcing a company to bench a well-known truck just to make room for their high-volume crossover. The physical act of building cars is more fragile than it has been in decades.
Which leads right into the third theme, the downstream burden.
Right. The local dealers are the ones standing at the bottom of the hill catching all of this hauling debris.
Yeah, they really are.
Because inventory is tight and new cars are expensive, they are bearing the brunt of the market shifts. It is forcing them into incredibly complex, administratively heavy direct-to-consumer operations just to keep used cars on their lots.
It is a wild web of contradictions when you really take a step back.
Yeah.
I mean, you have major automakers desperately needing cheaper parts to stay profitable, like we saw with the Volkswagen profit miss.
Right.
But at the exact same time, geopolitical regulations are forcing them to abandon those cheap parts and use more expensive suppliers, as detailed in the China tech rules.
It's a huge tension. And down at the retail level, you have a similar agonizing contradiction.
Yeah.
Dealerships desperately want higher volume to meet consumer demand for used cars. But as we just discussed with the direct-to-consumer bottleneck, their own administrative limits and lack of back-end software infrastructure are holding them back from actually achieving that volume.
Right.
They are starving for inventory while surrounded by people willing to sell.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? What is the practical takeaway from all of this?
Good question.
The bottom line is that the era of cheap, easily available, uncomplicated vehicles is officially over. Whether you are a massive global automaker trying to balance your portfolio, a local franchise dealer trying to secure inventory, or a buyer just looking for a reliable ride to work, survival now requires navigating intense complexity.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it means being willing to pay a premium for compliance, for quality, and for availability.
I completely agree. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we have discussed.
Okay, let's hear it.
If automakers are actively trimming their physical lineups to save money, and at the exact same time they're being forced to strip out highly integrated, affordable foreign tech components due to security policies, will the much-hyped smart car revolution actually start to slow down? Might these immense financial and regulatory pressures force the industry to take a step backward, returning to simpler, more mechanical, less connected vehicles just to keep the assembly lines moving and the prices somewhat affordable for the average family?
Wow, now that is a fascinating question. Are we going to see the return of the analog car just out of sheer economic necessity?
That could happen.
It's definitely a trend we will be watching closely. Thank you so much for tuning in. Keep a close eye on your local dealer lots because you are going to start seeing these global shifts playing out right there in real time, affecting the stickers on the windows and the inventory on the pavement. This has been Auto News Talk. We will see you.